Shalom, and welcome to another edition here on the Genesis 49ers page, where we say no to vague interpretation and we give thorough breakdowns.
Genesis 49ers, we back, but never moving backwards. Here to put Israel on the atlas. Y'all know the slogan. We say no to vague interpretations and we give thorough breakdowns. Now, I know it's been a minute, but we're back on the channel. I appreciate all of the support during my absence. Over 4,500 subscribers, over 300,000 views. I appreciate the support and I will continue to give you guys content. So today's video, today's topic is going to be science. And we're going to pose the question, does all scientific data conflict with the Bible? Because what most people do in the secular scientific community, what they do is they'll say, oh, you just have a religious mind state and you believe in things you can't see or you can't touch or you can't observe. Although majority of the things that are opposed by the secular science community, you cannot see, you cannot observe. You can't observe the Big Bang. There's no way. You can't observe unicellular organisms becoming multicellular organisms, let alone becoming fish, amphibian, reptile, and mammal, as they teach it in class and how they teach it in school. You can't observe these things. So who's really dogmatic? It sounds like these people have a double standard. So we're going to deal with this just in case any of you guys, any of the viewers, you have to deal with one of these scientific bigots that pretend that, oh, if you say anything out of the Bible, then you're just dumb, you're stupid. No, they don't even understand science. 9 times out of 10, these Facebook warriors, the people in the YouTube comments that want to troll, you don't even understand the subject at hand. You don't understand the material. But we're here for you. Y'all know the slogan, man. We say no to vague interpretations and give thorough breakdowns. So we're going to thoroughly break this down today. So first slide. Let's deal with let there be light. The scripture says let there be light. And most people say, oh, that's a contradiction because how is there light before the sun? How is there light before the stars were formed? Because the stars and the sun and the moon, all these things were created on the 4th day, which is correct. But if they understood science, science teaches you that light came before there was any stars, there was any celestial bodies or anything. So let's get right into it. The CMB, which is the cosmic microwave background, was created at the time in cosmic history called the recombination era. The universe had cooled to a temperature of about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,700 degrees Celsius, cool enough for electrons and protons to recombine into hydrogen atoms. Because remember, according to them, the lighter elements came first, right? Photons were released, and today this radiation is called the CMB. So this is light. These are photons. That's what light. It's producing light. This is before any stars, any galaxies were formed. There was always light. Just like the scriptures say. But oh, you believe that let there be light is possible before there was any stars? Yeah, that's what science teaches too. So miss me with the double standards. A lot of you people are hypocrites when it comes to the Bible. You're too damn biased. Let your biasness go and look at it with a clear lens. Look at the information with a clear lens. Next slide, before the stars. Near isotropy and perfect black body spectrum of CMB, which is cosmic microwave background, indicate that the CMB photons come from a universe as whole, not from an individual localized source within it like stars, galaxies. So this light is not coming from any celestial body. It's coming from the universe itself, because in the beginning God said let there be light. Now however you want to interpret that, you can interpret that. Some people think he really spoke that. I don't believe that per se, that he actually spoke it. I believe that some high science was going on with the Most High, because I believe he's the most intelligent and the most wise being that we know of in the universe. So whatever process he used it. But science agrees, secular science agrees with the Bible that light came first. 2 Ezra 6 verse 40 says, Then commandest thou a fair light to come forth of thy treasures, that thy work might appear. That lines up with the data collected by the scientists, right? The cosmic microwave background is proof of this. Light existed before the stars. So the Bible got that right. The Bible got that right. So we're going to drive this home. Next slide. Science uncovers the origin of the first light in the universe. Let there be light isn't just biblical, it's science. But its very nature, science knows no boundaries. Walling off any group for any reason and full participation damages the entire enterprise of science. We must be scientists without borders. And a lot of y'all have borders. That's a quote by Rocky Cole. When we look out at the universe today, highlighted against the vast empty blackness of the sky are points of light. Stars, galaxies, nebula, and more. Yet there was a time in the distant past before any of those things had formed, just after the Big Bang. I don't subscribe to the Big Bang, but of course, the scientific community, many facets of many groups and sects of the scientific community subscribes to it. It says, where the universe was filled with light. So they're saying before there was any stars, galaxies, nebula, anything, the universe was filled with light. That sounds like the biblical story, the biblical account, which a lot of you people that subscribe to secular science, you deny it. But you're saying the same damn thing. Your data is coming to the same conclusion. Now, it says the universe was still filled with light. If we look into the microwave part of the spectrum, we can find remnants of this light today in the form of the cosmic microwave background. But even as CMB is relatively late, we're seeing this light from 380,000 years after the Big Bang. Light, as far as we know it, existed even before that. After centuries of investigating the origins of the universe, science has finally uncovered what physically happened to let there be light in space. And I got this from www.medium.com. And you see the article's title, Science Uncovers the Origin of the First Light in the Universe. So the scriptures, the biblical scriptures got this right. The biblical account got it right. Next slide. For all you scientific bigots out there that want to say, oh, you people that deal with the Bible, you deal with the religious text, then you're an idiot. Or you don't understand science. No, you don't understand science. Because if you did, you wouldn't make those claims and those silly arguments against the scriptures. Oh, how do you have light before the sun? Easy, brother. Easy. Light was before any stars or any galaxies or nebula. We read it in an article, right? The proof's in the pudding, as they say. USAtoday.com. How do we know the age of the earth? I'm bringing this up for a reason, because a lot of people say, oh, the age of the earth is something that's known. Let's go into the logic behind this. It says in 1956, Patterson published a study in the Journal of Geochimica et Cosmochimica Acta that reported lead ratios found in one of the Canyon Diablo meteorites. These iron meteorites are leftover pieces of a big one that created a meteor crater in Arizona about 50,000 years ago. Most important, they were also leftovers from the formation of the solar system, which before the publication of its papers was known only to be billions of years ago. Now this is according to them, not Genesis 49ers, right? As Patterson explained in an interview, in the year that he died, the Canyon Diablo meteorites didn't contain any uranium, a metal that radioactively decays into lead at a well-established rate, taking hundreds of millions of years. Other rocks contain both lead and uranium, screwing up the earlier age estimates. So, I just want to point something out. They're using meteorites to gauge the Earth's age. If you don't see the issue with this, then I don't know why you're watching this video. Last time I checked, you have to measure the Earth's crust or something from the damn Earth to figure out how old the Earth is. Not an outside interference, an outside object that came into our atmosphere. So that's strike one on it. Let's go to the next slide. Earth's age. The best estimate for Earth's age is based on the radiometric dating of fragments from the Canyon Diablo iron meteorite. From the fragments, scientists calculate the relative abundance of elements that formed as a radioactive uranium decayed over billions of years. This was done in the 50s. The source is livescience.com. How's the Earth's age calculated? So they're using a meteorite to determine the age of the Earth, and basing it off a theory of this radioactive decay rate, which is really not the same. It's not constant. We know this. So let's go to the next slide. Young Earth. The possibility of PO radio halos and thus also rapid hydrothermal fluid flows and metamorphic rocks has powerful implications for the rapid formation and cooling of regional metamorphic complexes. This needs further investigation. Additionally, now I want to say something about that. This needs further investigation. Guess what? The meteorites don't need further investigation because they're fucking meteorites. Excuse my language. I didn't mean to cuss on this channel, but they're meteorites. They're an outside influence. They don't come from the Earth. Therefore, why are you even using that to gauge the age of the Earth? Anyway, let's continue on. Additionally, the PO radio halo evidence for rapid hydrothermal fluid flow has far-reaching implications for the rapid deposition and formation of many classes of metallic ore deposits hosted by and associated with granite, other plutonic, and metamorphic rocks. Thus, the PO radio halos are potentially powerful evidence for rapid geological processes within the year of the flood on the young Earth. Radio Halos, A Tale of the Three Granitic Plutons by Andrew A. Snelling, a PhD. Because a lot of people say, oh, you got any PhD? This is a PhD saying this. He's advocating for a much younger Earth, not billions of years ago or millions of years ago. What did they say? The Earth is 4.6 billion years old. He's advocating for a younger Earth, and he's using these PO radio halos from metamorphic rock, which is what on the Earth, not using asteroids, meteorites to determine the age of the Earth. So which one I'm going to go with? I'm going to go with the one that's more plausible. The radio halos that come from metamorphic rocks that come from the crust of the Earth. It's that simple. So the Earth is a lot younger. So when they come with that, oh, the Earth's got to be this old, and if you're teaching anything else, then you're a liar, or you just don't know science. No, you're biased, and you don't want to let this westernized science. That's another thing. Someone told me today on Facebook, oh, I'm dealing with westernized religion. No, the religion I deal with comes from the Middle East. You're dealing with westernized Western science, man. You're dealing with some 17th, 18th century mumbo jumbo. All right, that's what you're dealing with 19th century and 20th century when we're dealing with these meteorites. Talk about the pot calling the kettle black. Next slide. Terror. So let's deal with Earth. In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth. A lot of people will say, oh, this is a contradiction. How can there be an earth without the sun? Verse 2, it says, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So the earth came before the sun according to the scriptures. Right? A lot of people say, oh, that is a clear contradiction because there's no way you can have an earth without a sun. If anyone says that, they clearly don't understand science and scientific data and research, because we have rogue planets that don't have stars. So let's deal with this. It says rogue planets are everywhere. Gravitational microlensing observations of 50 million stars in the Milky Way found 10 Jupiter-sized rogue planets. Rogue planets mean they don't have a star. Okay? This helps scientists estimate that there are at least 2 rogue planets for every star in the galaxy. This means that there are potentially billions of rogue planets out there lurking silently in the dark. Many of them are likely Earth-sized too. So what does this mean? There's plenty of planets that don't have stars. You don't have to have a star to have a planet. A dead and desolate planet with no heat and light from the sun seems like the last place to look for life. However, there are ways rogue planets can retain heat and have suitable conditions for life. So even science, even secular science is telling you you don't need a star to have a planet. So anybody tell you, oh, how do you have the Earth before the sun? It's plausible. We see examples. We can observe the examples in space. We can't observe Big Bang, but you believe in it. We can't observe apes turning into humans, wolves turning into whales, or whales turning into wolves. We can't observe these things. We can't observe macroevolution. We can't observe reptiles becoming birds. We can't observe these things, but you believe it wholeheartedly. We can observe our planet existing without a star hosting it. These rogue planets. And you got a hard time. Oh, how can the Earth come before the sun? Easily. And you don't need a sun to have a planet. It's that simple. And that's from medium.com. How planets without stars can possibly host life on them. Moving on. Oh, you know what? Let me go to this slide. Back on the age of the Earth real quick. Then we're going to go back dealing with the rogue planets, dealing with the sun, the day the sun came in. And then we're going to move on with the presentation. It says that the results suggest that up to 80 to 50% of the Earth's ocean's water and perhaps 60 to 100% of the water on comets originally formed in interstellar space before the sun was born. Now you can see the title where I got this from. Much of Earth's water is older than the sun. Because a lot of people say, oh, if the Earth came before the sun, that would mean the Earth would have to be older than the sun. Which really doesn't conflict with modern secular science anyway, because they say they're both about 4.6 billion years old. So it really doesn't even conflict. But these are the arguments many numbskulls that claim to know science make against the Bible and against anything that's religious, right? So they said even perhaps 60 to 100% of the water is older than the sun. These are high-end estimates generated by simulations. The low-end estimates suggest that at least 7% of the ocean water and at least 14% of the comet water predates the sun. So the water here predates the sun. The scriptures say that the earth was filled with water, what we're going to deal with in a minute. Before, right? It was just filled with water, and then the land rose, right? So, again, that's an article from space.com. Much of Earth's water is older than the sun by Mike Wall, senior writer. It was published, September 25th, 2014. So moving on. So the sun was created on the fourth day of creation, the earth, the first day of creation, which I don't believe these were 24-hour diurnal days. I believe these were periods of time that took place, not an actual 24-hour segment, right? So it says, God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night. He made the stars also. Excuse me. So all of that was made on the fourth day according to the biblical account. Now, sidebar real quick. All you people trying to use this scripture to say that the full moon is the new moon, that is very unintelligible. To put it in the nicest form I can, right? It's very unintelligible because this scripture is only telling you the function of the sun and the moon. They're both lights. The moon doesn't stop being a light. It doesn't stop. It's always halfway lit at every given time because half of it's always reflecting the sun rays. That's just a quick sidebar. But the fourth day is when it was created. The earth was created before the sun according to the biblical account. And no, it does not go against science, the scientific data, because science shows you that the earth could be older than the sun. The earth could have came first. That you could have rogue planets without a star to host it. The reason why people have a problem with that because they believe that a star exploded and gave birth to the planetary disk, and then the planetary disk created the earth or created the planets around the sun. That's a theory. You can't see that or observe that, but I can observe planets existing without stars. I can observe that. Moving on. So the Bible even describes space. 2 Ezra 6 verse 39. And quick sidebar before I read the scriptures. The Book of the Dead even says that, I forget what it's called, the afterlife that they call it. In that place or that area, there's no water or air. And we know in space there's no water or air that we know of now. And when I say water, I'm talking about H2O. Don't tell me about ice out of space, because that could be methane. That could be any other chemical or anything else that's frozen or liquefied. Anyway, 2 Ezra 6 verse 39 says, and there was the spirit, and darkness and silence were on every side. The sound of man's voice was not yet formed. I believe this scripture is depicting outer space, interplanetary space, interstellar space, and intergalactic space. So I believe that these men that was penning this to paper were wise, and they were being instructed by someone who understood how the world works and the universe works. We call them prophets. Job 26 verse 7 says, he stretcheth out the north over the empty place, and hangeth the earth upon nothing. And we know that this is true according to science. The earth hangs on nothing, which is space. Which space is a void. It just hangs there. It's not on no pillar. I hate to hurt all of the flat earthers' feelings. The earth is not on a stool or on pillars. Okay? It hangs on nothing. It's a sphere that hangs on nothing, which is space. Job understood that. The forefathers understood that. And you guys don't know science. Oh, you're not dealing. That's why you believe in the Bible. The Bible said this thousands of years ago, that the earth hangeth upon nothing, man. You had other coaches talking about it was on pillars and all this other madness. Again, remember I brought up that the earth started off submerged in water. It says, they are showing when continents actually emerged from the oceans, said Lee, who wrote an accompanying news article in Nature Geoscience. Continents certainly existed early in Earth's history, but perhaps many were submerged. Geologist Sentai Lee at Rice University in Houston. Source livescience.com. Continents rose above oceans about 3 billion years ago, and they're using secular dates. I don't subscribe to the dating system, but they're using it. All I'm bringing forth is the data and showing that the data agrees with the biblical text, because the biblical text says the earth started off in water and then land arose, right? All right, so we're going to get into it. 2 Ezra 6 verse 41 and 42. It says, upon the second day thou madest the spirit of the firmament, and commandest it to part asunder, and to make a division betwixt the waters, that one part might go up and the other remain beneath. All right, and the water that remain beneath, some say underneath the crust, some say that's the ocean, and the water that remains above is the ozone layer. That's what many people have their different outlooks and interpretations on that. The point is, you had waters first. Waters. You didn't have land. Just like science, secular science, the data in secular science agrees with that the whole planet was submerged in water. Verse 42 says, upon the third day thou didst command the water should be gathered in the seventh part of the earth. 6 parts hast thou dried up, and kept them to the intent that of these some being planted of God, until it might serve thee. So the continents, the earth, was all submerged until the third day according to creation. That lines up with science. The continents didn't emerge first. They were submerged underwater, just like the biblical account states. And 2 Ezra is in the Apocrypha, okay, the books they took out. Just in case any of my viewers are not familiar with 2 Ezra. Moving on to the next slide. What are we proving? The scientific data doesn't disagree with the Bible. It doesn't. It's the conclusions. It's the conclusions that these people come to saying that we all come from apes, or macroevolution is true, or the Big Bang is true. All these different weird ideas that they came up with as fairy tales. You might as well go watch Pixar or Disney. Okay, if you want to see macroevolution, watch the princess kiss the frog, and the frog transform into a damn man. That's macroevolution. You might as well believe that. But you want to question the validity of the biblical account and the Israelites? Come on, man. Next slide. All right, now we're going to deal with. Before we get into that, let's deal with Ezekiel 1 and 4. I always found this quite interesting. Ezekiel 1 and 4 says, "And I looked, and behold, a whirlwind came out of the north, a great cloud, and a fire enfolding itself, and a brightness was about it. And out of the midst thereof, as the color of amber, out of the midst of the fire." Now, these are beings coming to visit Ezekiel. If you read the whole chapter, I believe 1 and 10 talks about the same account. And these beings came to visit him, and he spoke with them. All right. And the way they came to him reminded me of atmosphere reentry. So the atmosphere reentry, the intense heat, is a result of friction between the speeding object and the air. And that's why when something re-enters the atmosphere, it looks like it sets on fire. It looks like a ball of flame. And that's what it says here in Ezekiel 1 and 4, a fire unfolding on itself. When these beings were visiting Ezekiel, it seemed like they was coming out of space, and they came in, hit the atmosphere, and they experienced what we call atmosphere reentry, and that explains the flames. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's very interesting to me. It looks like the scriptures was explaining atmospheric reentry thousands of years ago. So now let's deal with the genetic thing, because they always have argument. The argument is, how do you believe that the whole earth was populated by 3 men? 3 men. Shem, Ham, and Japheth and their wives, right? Well, it's something called epistasis. Epistasis describes how gene interaction can affect phenotypes. Did you know that genes can mask each other's presence or combine to produce an entirely new trait? With that being stated, that answers the question. If you have 3 men, and over time, periods of time, they can diversify with epistasis, because the gene interactions can affect the phenotypes. It can affect the way their children looks. And even with chimerism, you can change the gene where the son's gene will not match the genomes of the mother and the father. This can all be explained scientifically, but since you're biased and you hate the biblical text and you don't want to look at the information objectively, then you just say anything to disregard it. So epistasis can explain why we see humanity being diversified so much and coming from 3 people, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So let's move on. Genetic drifting also explains this. Genetic drift describes random fluctuations in the numbers of gene variants in a population. Now we know variance means differences, right? Genetic drift takes place when the occurrence of variant forms of a gene called alleles increases and decreases by chance over time. So you had Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and over time they had children, their children had children, their children had children. They migrated, they're getting introduced to new foods, different foods. Okay, these are all the ingredients that lead up to gene variants. These variations in the presence of alleles are measured as change in alleles frequencies. Typically, genetic drift occurs in small populations, where infrequently occurring alleles face a greater chance of being lost. Once it begins, genetic drift will continue until the involved allele is either lost by a population or until it's the only allele present in a population at a particular locus. Both possibilities decrease the genetic diversity of a population. Genetic drift is common after population bottlenecks, which are the events that drastically decrease the size of a population. In these cases, genetic drift can result in the loss of rare alleles and decrease the gene pool. Genetic drift can cause a new population to be genetically distinct from its original population. Genetic drift can cause a new population to be genetically distinct from its original population, which has led to the hypothesis that genetic drift plays a role in the evolution of new species, which that's just a hypothesis. But we can see that genetic drift, he said, after bottlenecks or a catastrophe happens, right? When we know a catastrophe happened before Shem and Ham and Japheth, the flood happened, right? So you can get these variants after that happens. It's scientific, but it's okay for them to use this for evolution, but it's not okay for us to use genetic drifting, epistasis, to explain the variants that came from Shem, Ham, and Japheth and populating the earth. And the source is www.nature.com. The title is Random Genetic Drift. Moving on. So again, does the Bible really conflict with scientific data? I think not. Well, at least not all of it. Now let's deal with genes. Because again, the question that they pose is, how do you believe that all people on the earth came from 3 individuals or 3 men and their wives? In variable expressivity, a phenotype may be stronger or weaker in different people with the same genotype. For instance, in a group of people with disease-causing genotype, some might develop a severe form of the disorder, while others might have a milder form. The idea of expressivity is illustrated in the diagram below, with the shade of green representing the strength of the phenotype. Now, narrow expressivity, all will look the same, to get you a general idea. This is from khanacademy.org, by the way. Individual of the same genotype for gene interest. This is variable expressivity. Now you see different gene variants and phenotypic expression and variable expressivity, because this can happen. So you can get mankind and nations diversified from 3 people. It can happen with genes, genetic drifting, epistasis, right? Chimerism. Variable expressivity, all these things play a part in how the genetic tree grew and blossomed on Earth. Next slide. Again, I told you, we don't deal with vague interpretations. We give thorough breakdowns. So we here, man. We here to stay. Genesis 49. To subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Genes. In incomplete penetrance, individuals with a certain genotype may or may not develop a phenotype associated with the genotype. So, okay, let's say Japheth has a child, right? He has another child. No, you know what? Let me deal with Jacob and Esau, because this is a prime example. They had the same parents. So that means they came from the same genotype, right? But Esau looked different than his brother Jacob. If you believe he's a so-called white man or not, we do understand that he looked different than his brother. Now, I teach and subscribe that he's the beginning of the Caucasian race, and he looked very different. The blood showed forth through his skin, right? Because his skin was pale and Jacob's was dark. So let's deal with Jacob and Esau for a minute. Incomplete penetrance, that individuals with a certain genotype may or may not develop a phenotype associated with the genotype. I believe that's what we're seeing, and that's what we're reading about when we read the history of Esau and his birth, and him looking completely different than his brother, even though they shared the same mother and same father. For example, among people with the same disease causing genotype or hereditary disorder, some might never actually develop the disorder. The idea of penetrance is illustrated in the diagram below, with green or white color representing the presence or absence of a phenotype. Now, complete penetrance, you will always get the same phenotype. Incomplete penetrance, now you can see, according to the example, you're not. Some are white, some are green. The greatest example of this is Jacob and Esau. Esau is an example of incomplete penetrance. It can be explained scientifically. That's why you have to look at the information objectively. All right. Final slide. And if you like the video, thumbs it up, comment below what you thought about it. And if there's enough, if there's hunger for another video, I would do a part 2. But let's deal with the Hubble telescope and what they brought back, the Hubble expanse theory, right? It says the universe really is expanding faster than scientists had thought. New research suggests the universe is expanding surprisingly fast by Mike Wall on space.com. Meaning, if it is expanding that faster than they thought, then the universe isn't 14.6 billion years old, because how they came up with the age of the universe is through the Hubble expanse rate, which now they found out is faster than they previously thought. But anyway, that's the sidebar. Psalms 104 verse 2 says, who covers thyself with light as with a garment, who stretches out the heaven like a curtain. So we've been knowing the universe is being stretched or expanding, or is expanding. So I'm gonna roll with the prophets at the end of the day. It's Genesis 49ers. Like I've been saying, man, subscribe to the channel. We say no to vague interpretations and we get thorough breakdowns. And oh yeah, we do debates too. So if anybody want to challenge me, you can be a keyboard warrior all day in the comment section, or you can challenge me to a debate. And if the topic's worthy, I will accept. And we'll see who can really stand on their square with the information. Subscribe to the channel, man. Like the video, share the video. Let's get this video out here. And I'm praying that the Lord gives you guys stability, gives you guys wisdom, because wisdom is the stability of times, according to Isaiah 33:6. And stay tuned. This is basically season 2. Genesis 49 is season 2. We're providing more content to the channel. I thank you guys for supporting the channel during the hiatus, but I'm back now, and you'll continue to hear my voice and see these presentations. Genesis 49ers signing off.